Before we begin, take a breath. This isn't just a podcast, it's a new way to think, speak, and live in English. Welcome to Confluent Podcast, where words flow, confidence grows, and every sip brings you closer to fluency. So, if I told you that your primary house is actually draining your wealth and your polished resume is actively preventing you from getting hired?
Yeah, that sounds completely backward to most people.
Right. And what if I told you that a simple plastic bucket is a fundamentally better business investment than a massive bank loan? I mean, you would probably think I've completely lost my mind.
I mean, it sounds like a total rejection of, well, everything a normal person is taught about success.
Exactly. But today, our mission for this deep dive is to extract these unconventional, highly effective strategies for financial freedom, career hacking, and business building from our latest sources.
And as we strip down the material, you're going to see that normal is exactly what you want to avoid. The through line connecting all these seemingly radical ideas is the necessity of questioning conventional rules.
Yeah, and we've got quite the journey ahead. We're going to connect Robert Kiyosaki's financial principles, LeBron James's career moves, a bucket of soapy water, and, oddly enough, the history of the English language.
It's a wild mix,
Yeah.
but we are basically looking at a masterclass in how to take back control of your life. And you do that by recognizing that the standard playbook is, frankly, broken.
That is the perfect place to start because the very first chapter of that standard playbook is always, buy a house, it's your greatest asset. Everyone says it.
Oh, absolutely. Your parents, your banker,
Yeah.
society at large.
Right. But our source material pulls heavily from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad to just completely shatter that exact premise. The source bluntly states that your house is not an asset. It is a liability.
And that definition of asset versus liability, that is the hinge upon which your entire financial life swings.
Because we're so conditioned to look at a house, see its market value, and just think we're rich.
Exactly.
Mhm.
But the source asks you to look at the cash flow instead. An asset puts money into your pocket every month, regardless of whether you are working.
Right.
A liability takes money out of your pocket every month. So unless your house is generating an income for you, it is actively draining your resources.
It really is. I mean, for the vast majority of the population, housing is their second biggest expense, usually sitting right behind taxes.
It's a massive wealth leak.
Yeah.
Every single month, a huge percentage of your labor is just, well, evaporating to keep a roof over your head.
But obviously, you can't just live on the street. You need a place to sleep.
Sure, yeah.
So the source presents this incredibly practical workaround called hybrid housing, which is essentially house hacking.
Right. I love this concept.
Instead of throwing your entire net worth into a massive down payment for a traditional single-family home and locking yourself into a 30-year drain, you target a duplex.
You live in one half and you rent out the other half.
Yes. And if you structure the deal correctly, the rent that your neighbor pays covers the entirety of your bank loan. You have effectively neutralized your biggest expense.
And look, the sources acknowledge that a duplex isn't a feasible reality in every single real estate market, right?
For sure.
But the underlying philosophy of hybrid housing still applies. If you can't get a multifamily property, you look at a standard home or a condo and you engineer a division.
Like putting up a wall.
Exactly. You physically construct a wall to isolate a large section of the property. You add a separate entrance, drop in a kitchenette, fit a bathroom, and then you put that isolated unit onto platforms like Airbnb, Booking.com, or Expedia.
Oh, wow. So the mechanism is identical. You're turning a dormant, money-draining space into an active revenue stream to cover the mortgage.
Precisely.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
unpack this because my immediate reaction, and maybe yours listening right now, is one of skepticism regarding the risk.
Sure, that's natural.
What if you carve out this beautiful little Airbnb suite and nobody books it, or you buy the duplex and the other half just sits empty for 6 months?
Right.
Aren't you taking on a terrifying amount of risk by purchasing real estate and just crossing your fingers that a stranger's going to pay for it? To me, it feels a bit like you're in a leaking boat.
A leaking boat. How so?
Well, you can bail the water out by working harder at your day job, but if you don't plug the biggest hole, which is that massive housing payment, you're going to sink anyway. And buying a duplex feels like buying a bigger boat with a potentially bigger hole.
What's fascinating here is that when you look at the math, the risk profile is actually incredibly low. In fact, it is significantly lower than a traditional home purchase.
Really? How does that work?
Let's look at your worst case scenario. You build the suite or you buy the duplex and absolutely no one rents it. What happens?
You're stuck paying for it.
You simply live in the property and you pay the housing costs you're already going to pay anyway. You still have your shelter. The baseline hasn't worsened.
Oh, I see. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
But the upside, if you do rent it out, your primary housing cost drops to zero. That isn't just a minor win, it completely alters the trajectory of your life.
Yeah, by plugging that massive leak in the boat, you are suddenly retaining hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars a month.
Exactly. And that is the capital you deploy to purchase actual assets like stocks, bonds, or more real estate that will permanently fund your life.
But freeing up that capital brings us to a massive psychological trap. The transition from housing to personal finance in our sources is fascinating because it points out a brutal reality.
Which is,
Eliminating your rent is completely useless if you don't rewire your brain. The root of all money problems isn't a lack of cash, it is entirely mental and emotional.
oh, 100%. It is fundamentally an issue of discipline and self-control.
Hmm.
This is the invisible wall that keeps people trapped in the rat race forever.
Yeah.
The source observes a very common, very destructive pattern.
Right.
A person makes $1,000, they spend $1,000.
Right. The lifestyle creep.
Exactly. If they get a promotion, or maybe they hack their housing and suddenly have an extra $10,000, they find a way to spend $10,000. The money just vaporizes into lifestyle upgrades.
Because they are playing a status game, they get a little breathing room in their budget, and immediately they feel the urge to signal their new wealth to everyone around them.
Yeah, they lease the luxury car, they upgrade to designer clothes.
They buy things they don't actually need just to maintain an illusion of success. I absolutely love the specific example the source uses to shatter this mindset. Warren Buffett.
Oh, that's a great example.
You have one of the wealthiest billionaires on the planet, a man who could buy literally anything, and he is notorious for dressing terribly.
He really is.
He completely opts out of the status game. He does not care if a stranger is impressed by his suit.
And that indifference to the opinions of others is his ultimate superpower. The source emphasizes that true financial safety comes from establishing what they call a low baseline.
A low baseline.
Right. You aggressively cut your expenses, not out of a scarcity mindset, but as a rigorous mental training exercise. You have to build the internal discipline required to handle large sums of money.
That makes a lot of sense.
If you cannot manage a small surplus without immediately inflating your lifestyle, you will absolutely panic or overextend yourself when it comes to larger investments.
So what does this all mean? Like, for the listener who assumes that just getting a raise will magically fix all their financial stress.
It means they are walking into a trap. A higher salary without a disciplined baseline is just a shortcut to larger liabilities.
Wow.
If you lack internal control, starting a business or diving into real estate investing will end in disaster, guaranteed. The extra money from a raise won't bring peace. It will just fund a more expensive, more stressful cycle of debt.
So mastering the baseline, learning to thrive on very little, even when you have a lot, is the mandatory prerequisite to everything else. Which naturally brings us to the offensive side of the equation. Let's assume you've mastered the defense. You have ironclad discipline. You've hacked your housing, and your baseline is incredibly low.
You know how to keep your capital.
Right. Now, how do you actively increase your income? This leads us into the career hacking portion of our deep dive, and the source delivers a completely brutal truth about the modern job hunt.
It really is a reality check that fundamentally changes how you view human resources.
Yeah, because resumes and CVs are not utilized to hire you, they are utilized to eliminate you.
Yep, the standard process of applying for a job through a portal is a trap.
An HR representative has hundreds of applications to get through. They are not reading your carefully crafted life story.
No, they spend somewhere between 5 and 30 seconds scanning your document, actively hunting for a single reason, any reason, to throw your paper in the trash and thin the pile.
It is entirely an exercise in rapid elimination. So the strategy provided by the source is brilliantly subversive. You bypass human resources entirely.
You stop acting like a passive applicant waiting to be chosen.
Exactly. You act like an aggressive marketer. You identify 30 specific companies that you actually want to work for. Do the research to figure out exactly who the department managers are, like the actual individuals who would be your direct bosses.
Right.
And you send targeted letters directly to them before any job requisition is ever posted online.
You are creating the opportunity before the competition even knows the game has started. The source frames this with a perfect sports analogy, actually.
Oh, right. The free agent concept.
Yes. If you want to command the highest salary and the best terms, you have to adopt the mindset of a free agent. Think about the absolute superstars of the sporting world. Players like Cristiano Ronaldo, or LeBron James.
Yeah.
They are not sitting around waiting for their current team to fire them before they start looking at their options. They are perpetually evaluating the landscape.
They move teams strategically to gain leverage, command more money, and put themselves in better situations.
Exactly. They view themselves as an independent business entity, not a loyal servant to a single franchise. That superstar mentality is exactly what professionals in any industry need to adopt.
Here's where it gets really interesting, but isn't it highly stressful to constantly be looking for a job, to be researching 30 companies and writing direct pitches to managers while you are already trying to perform at your 9 to 5? It sounds exhausting.
It sounds counterintuitive, yes, but the source argues that the exact opposite is true. What is truly stressful is the conventional path.
Waiting until you get laid off.
Right. Waiting until you are laid off, watching your savings drain away, and desperately firing off resumes into HR portals while hoping someone takes pity on you. That is peak anxiety.
Well, absolutely.
Searching for your next move while you are happily and securely employed provides you with absolute leverage. You're operating from a position of total strength, devoid of desperation.
And if one of those 30 targeted letters results in a conversation, and that conversation results in a higher offer, you now hold the ultimate trump card.
Precisely. You walk into your current boss's office, present the offer, and negotiate a raise. If they refuse, there is no stress. You simply accept the new offer and walk out the door.
It is the ultimate manifestation of being a free agent.
Yeah.
You dictate the terms, and that mindset perfectly primes us for the ultimate free agent maneuver.
Starting your own business.
Yes. If you are already treating yourself as an independent business entity, the logical next step is to step out of the employee matrix entirely and actually launch your own company.
And this is precisely where most people freeze. The source details how aspiring entrepreneurs become completely paralyzed by the illusion of the perfect idea.
They retreat into the safety of planning.
Exactly. They will spend 6 months or a year drafting these monumental 100-page business plans, trying to forecast every variable, map every competitor, and predict every financial outcome before they have even spoken to a single customer.
Or they think the barrier to entry is formal education. They believe they need an MBA before they can sell a product, but the source is adamant that you cannot learn the reality of business from a textbook.
No, you certainly cannot learn it sitting in a lecture hall listening to a university professor who has zero real-world experience building a company from scratch.
It's no coincidence that Steve Jobs dropped out of college to build Apple in a garage. Business is a contact sport. You only learn it by doing it.
This raises an important question, though. Why does society at large default to this paralysis?
Fear of failure.
Well, it is because the general public equates starting a business with catastrophic financial risk. They hear the word entrepreneurship, and they picture someone taking out a $300,000 bank loan to open a physical restaurant.
Which is notoriously one of the most difficult, low-margin industries on Earth.
Right, and usually with absolutely no prior operational experience.
It's financial suicide. But the source immediately contrasts that nightmare scenario with the reality of low-risk entrepreneurship. You don't need a $300,000 loan. You can start a highly profitable enterprise for $300.
Or even less.
Yeah. The source uses the beautifully simple example of a mobile car wash business. What are your actual capital requirements? You need a bucket, a sponge, and some soap.
That is your entire overhead.
With those 3 items, you are officially in business and ready to generate revenue.
It is a masterclass in stripping away unnecessary complexity. The actionable imperative here is that reality is the only valid testing ground. Not a spreadsheet, not a business plan. You launch your simple, low-cost service immediately.
And if you don't know how to price it?
You test that in reality, too. The source suggests you just pick a number. Set your price at $1,000. Pitch it to a client and watch what happens.
And if it fails, you don't panic. You simply adjust.
Exactly. You lower the offer to $500. If nobody bites, you drop it to $300. You keep adjusting your parameters in the real world until you find the exact intersection where a customer says yes, and you walk away with a profit.
You let the market dictate your strategy, not your assumptions. But right here, the source drops a massive, blinking warning sign for anyone ready to take this leap.
Oh, this part is crucial.
It is a detail that will save you a lot of heartache. You must immediately stop discussing your business ideas with your friends and family.
Yes. It sounds harsh, but unless your immediate circle is populated by actively successful entrepreneurs, their opinions are not just useless, they are actively toxic to your momentum.
Why? because they are entirely conditioned by the traditional industrial era pipeline. They were trained to go to school, get a piece of paper, and sit in a cubicle for 40 years.
Yep.
When you enthusiastically tell them you are starting a business with a plastic bucket and a sponge, they lack the framework to evaluate your business model. All they're doing is projecting their own deep-seated fears of the unknown directly onto you.
They will tell you it's dangerous, that you're going to embarrass yourself, and that you should just be grateful for your safe, secure job.
A job which, as we established during the HR discussion, isn't actually secure at all, considering you can be eliminated in a 30-second resume scan.
Exactly. It's the illusion of safety versus the reality of control.
Now, if you are going to execute these strategies, if you are going to bypass global HR departments, act as a free agent, and launch businesses that can scale, you need the ultimate tool of communication.
You do.
And this is where the source makes a fascinating pivot, blending history and business to explain exactly why this deep dive and the global economy at large operates in English.
It is the ultimate networking tool. But, the dominance of English wasn't inevitable.
Not at all. Historically, if you wanted to do international business or diplomacy, the lingua franca, the common bridge language of the world, was French.
Right.
It was the language of the royal courts and the elite across Europe. So why did it change?
Well, the source traces how linguistic dominance follows geopolitical power. The shift away from French began with the aggressive, global expansion of the British Empire, planting the English language on almost every continent.
Okay, that makes sense.
Then, as the British Empire contracted after the World Wars, the baton was passed to the American Empire, which rose to unparalleled economic and cultural dominance in the 20th century.
And then the internet happened.
Exactly. The absolute explosion of the internet, which was architected largely in English, permanently cemented its status.
Here is where the source ties this history lesson directly back to our business principles. They use a brilliant analogy to explain why English maintains its grip today, even as other economies grow.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the network effect. It is the exact same mechanism that drives social media monopolies.
Like Facebook.
Right. Why do billions of human beings actively use Facebook instead of migrating to MySpace or some brand new platform that objectively has better features and less advertising?
It's certainly not because Facebook's code is inherently vastly superior to everything else ever created.
No, the technology itself is secondary. People use Facebook because everyone they already know is on Facebook. The intrinsic value of the network scales exponentially with every single new user who joins.
Yeah, if you download a highly advanced new app, but none of your friends, family, or clients are on it, it is completely useless to you.
The source argues that English dominates the globe today because of this exact network effect. If you want to negotiate as a free agent, travel seamlessly, or scale that low-risk business across borders, you use English.
Not because it is linguistically superior or more beautiful than Spanish or Mandarin, but because the global infrastructure is already built on it. Everyone else is already there.
It is the ultimate connector, the master key that unlocks all the other strategies we've discussed today.
So let's step back and look at the incredible map our sources have drawn for us.
Mm.
We started by radically redefining our assets, plugging the biggest leak in our financial boat by utilizing hybrid housing to erase our living expenses.
Which is huge.
We realized that extra cash is useless without mental discipline, so we committed to lowering our baseline and ignoring the status games that keep people broke.
Right.
Armed with that discipline, we learned how to hack the job market, ignoring the HR elimination machine, treating ourselves like free agent superstar athletes, and pitching directly to decision makers.
A total paradigm shift.
We saw how to take the ultimate leap into entrepreneurship by rejecting massive loans and business plans in favor of testing reality with just a bucket and a sponge. And finally, we decoded the network effect of the English language, giving us the communication infrastructure to take these ideas global.
For you listening to this, the overarching mandate is clear. You must systematically shed conventional wisdom.
Absolutely.
The traditional rules you have been taught, from how to buy a house, to how to apply for a job, to how to launch a company, they are fundamentally designed to keep you constrained and compliant.
Yeah.
Your true leverage, your actual power, lies in your willingness to look at the board differently and act decisively when everyone else is paralyzed by the fear of breaking the rules.
You cannot wait for someone else to fix your boat. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Confluent podcast sources, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to carry with you. If you applied the free agent mindset to not just your career, but your entire existence, your housing situation, your daily habits, your personal network, What is the very first contract in your life that you would renegotiate today?